So this afternoon session, here's a tentative agenda of what we're going to be going through. Now, this is pretty drawn out. Usually we end like this conversational AI. I think I have it blocked off for an hour. I think I mistyped that because there's not a ton there. So we will be talking about really the cool things that Azure has, the cool different tools that Azure really comes through there. And so we might alter that break a little bit, depends on how long it takes us to get through computer vision and NLPs, but we can start seeing the really, really, really neat things that honestly you can just instantly add in, which is quite a cool thing. Cool. So talking about computer vision is a tool from Microsoft that you can do a ton of things. One of those things is that you can do image classification. So it's basically training a machine learning model, just like what we talked about in the morning session, where we're training a model, but we're training it to classify images based on the contents. So if I want to do like a traffic monitoring solution, I might use a image classification model to classify images based on the type of vehicles so that they contain, such as a taxi or a bus or a cyclist and so on. So you sort of think about it. Remember the example of whenever we had flowers, the different flowers, what indicates, a sunflower versus a rose. Same sort of thing. What indicates a taxi versus a bus versus a cyclist, et cetera, et cetera. So within computer vision, I can also do object detection. So object detection is where I train a model to identify individual objects within an image. So I can identify their location. And what it does with object detection is it does this bounding box. So basically it puts a box, as you can see in this image here, around that image, although it does still have different things in there, right? So you see, even on this car, it is the car, but then it also has, this line from the road, this part of the road, et cetera, but it puts a bounding box and it can detect images or objects within an image. Now, if I wanted to go even further, right? And this is really important when it comes to like automated driving, right? So I need to know the exact width, and I need to know the size of cars, and I need to know the size of everything, right? I need to take in all that information. That's where semantic segmentation comes in. So it's just an advanced learning technique where the actual individual images pixels, within an image are classified according to the object in which they belong. So compared to the bounding box, remember we see, a little bit of the road or the crosswalk or a light pole in there. With semantic segmentation, it is just the pixels that are associated with the car, and that's it. So it's no extra road, there's no traffic light or people. It's just the part of the image that is the object, and then the other parts are, it doesn't handle that, right? It doesn't see the crosswalk or anything like that. It just shows the portion that is the car, the cyclist, or the bus, and it uses specific colors for that. Azure's computer vision can also do image analysis. So we can give it an image and it can actually use the machine learning models and advanced image analysis to extract information from an image, which is really cool. It can create a tag, right? So, if I want one with taxis or a dog, image might be there. But it also can create a descriptive caption that summarizes the scene shown in the image, which is wild, right? I can give this model an image, and it will literally say a person with a dog on a street, right? It will see that, it will know that, okay, there's a street, there's a person, there's a dog, and then it will use that to generate this tag that, gives a descriptive sentence of what is going on within this image. There's also with computer vision, and again, computer vision as a umbrella is something that Microsoft provides, right? It provides computer vision, and we'll see the services it has in just a bit with computer vision. But it also does face detection, analysis, and recognition. There is a tool out there that is better for face detection. So if I'm wanting to do like a Face ID, or if I'm creating an application that maybe a bank, in order to get into a vault, you have to have a certain Face ID and only managers or, vice presidents could get in there. There's other tools that are a little bit better for that. But for just an overall, I just want to see a face, right? And I just want to see people's faces. What I can do is I can use face detection, analysis, and recognition, and it will basically put a bounding box around a face. So that way I can detect how many people are in this image, or how many people, it can even say like, age and emotional state. So it can infer, like, are they stressed? Are they not? And even recognize individuals based on facial features. I mean, you think about it, like, this is just an off the cuff example, but maybe a bank would have this with their video. And then if somebody's face is looking like they're in distress, maybe nervous, like they're about to rob a bank or do something like that, that might signal, out there, like, hey, we need to call the cops because this person has a high probability of wanting to rob the bank, something of that nature. Within computer vision, we can also use optical character recognition. Now, I will say that there are different tools that we're going to look at that, just like the face one, there are tools that are designed specifically for that. But if we just wanted a general how many faces are in there in analysis, computer vision does do that. It does optical character recognition. So basically, I can send it an image and then it will tell me the words in there. Apple just came out and in their phones, like if you have an iPhone now, you can do the same thing where you take an image and you can either get the text or you can just, with your camera, press a button and then it'll just show the text and it actually makes like an actual text document. Where it's, kind of coming back to this responsibility thing. A lot of students are actually using it to cheat, which sounds kind of crazy. There's a lot of TikToks out there where people aren't taking notes and they'll just use their phone and zoom in and then see somebody else's notes on their computer and then just do image analysis. And then it will create a text document and then they put that on theirs. And so they just are stealing other people's notes, which is an interesting thing. But here you can do with OCR, you can just read text and photographs. Where, if I see this photograph and I want to say, what are the text within there? I can do that. You can also pass it scan documents. So like letters, invoices, and forms. If there is a lot of text, there's different tools that you want to use for that. So if it's, like a PDF and you wanted to read it and do different things, there's a more optimal way to do that. Or there's one called the Read API that we'll look at. But if we are just wanting to basically, I want to take a picture and maybe, super embarrassing story. I was in Barcelona, 2013. I hadn't really, your typical American, I hadn't really studied a ton of things and monuments and stuff outside of the US. And I was living in England. I was studying economics out there. And I went and I traveled to Barcelona and all these people were walking to this one building. So, walking in this way. And so I had 5 hours and I just started walking and I come up on this building and it is beautiful. It's incredible. It's like one of the prettiest buildings I've ever seen. I had no idea what it was. If you guys are familiar with Spain's architecture, there's a building, or just, I guess, if you're just, well-versed in other things other than America, there's this building called Sagrada de la Familia, which is just this beautiful church. I had no idea what it was. And I walked up to somebody who was selling tickets and I said, hey, what is this? And they were so offended because it was one of the, if not the most prominent architectural. It's like walking up to the White House and being like, what is this? Or walking up, something of that nature. And you're like, they were like, how dare you not know, you come into our country and not know like our history. And what the whole point of this is, there's a lot of apps out there now where I can either take a picture of a building, or maybe if there's a sign, I can take a picture of it and it'll send me the Wikipedia page. So that way I can actually look it up and not look so silly, and also not offend somebody because I was unversed in other technologies out there. So when it comes to Azure Computer Vision services, these are the 4 ones that we're going to talk about. Computer Vision is going to be our overarching service that we just talked about, right? So I can analyze images or videos. I can extract descriptions. I can extract tags, objects, and text, right? I can also do custom vision. So if I want to use this service to train custom image classification and object detection models using your own images. So let's say I wanted to create an app that recognized when people came up to my door. Let's say I had one of those rings, and when people came up to my door, I wanted to use this application to train. And if it was one of my friends, if it saw their face, it would automatically open the door and they wouldn't even have to ring or anything like that. The door would just unlock for them. But if it wasn't one of my friends, then it would remain locked. I could do that with custom vision. I would have to provide the data set. And we're going to talk about custom vision here in a bit. I'd have to provide tons of images for my friends, but I could actually create an application that would then allow for my friends to be recognized through this camera, as long as it's running through this, custom vision through this application, to where, certain things, or even it could say like, hey, Jake, good to see you. Doors now unlocking, right? Something like that. If I wanted to create that process, I totally could. And then, it sort of detects who's here, or et cetera, et cetera. There's also one called Face. We're going to go through these all in depth. Face, which is what I was talking about with facial detection and recognition solutions. This is the more sort of advanced version of computer vision. And then lastly is form recognizer. So if I want to do that, so you think from like a business standpoint, if you are in sales or if you're traveling and you need to get reimbursed, this would be a great way to scan receipts. And there's a lot of cool tools just out of the box that this stuff does. One thing I will say is when we're dealing with these services, we could, in theory, create all of these services ourselves, right? I could create a custom vision model. I can create custom vision. I can do face. I can do form recognizer. The reason this is so prominent is because the energy and the time and the power it would take for me to create a really powerful model is actually, it's really expensive. It's really expensive when it comes to like the energy usage, the time, the training piece. You have to have a powerful enough computer that can handle, millions and millions of lines of script. It's doable, right? I just saw a video of a guy who actually created Jarvis. It's really fascinating. I'm sure you can probably find it on YouTube, but a guy is literally creating Jarvis. Like he went through and he trained it on over 1,000 movies for its language. He trained it to how to speak like Jarvis. He trained it how to answer and predict what he's wanting to do. And it's a really fascinating thing. So it is capable, but it is taking months and months in order for this thing to become powerful, when we could actually just use Azure and just use a tool and we maybe pay a subscription fee, but it's already built. Microsoft has put millions of dollars into perfecting these tools, right? And making them the most accurate that they can be. And so with that, again, we could either do it ourselves or we can just use these tools, right? You could in theory take metal and make all the pieces of a car, right? And just like build it yourself, or you could go buy a car, right? It costs, I don't know what it would cost to build your own car, like build everything, but in theory you could do it. It just doesn't necessarily make sense. And so with this computer vision, there's a lot of things. It's not super expensive. It can get, but it's not super duper expensive, but it allows you to just out of the box, get an application up and running in a month versus years if you're wanting to truly train like a Jarvis model. So again, dealing with just computer vision, I just wanted to show this guy right here. Here's some AI demos of what you can do. So let's say I gave it an image, right? Through the computer vision, I pass in this image. This is what it would give, right? And then it also is great because it gives some tags and it gives a confidence level of, okay, this is existent. This is how confident I am. So it's confident that it's 100% confident that there is some water in this image, which is pretty interesting, right? Because it's just a reflection. It's 100% confidence that the sky is in this image. 95% confidence this is a lake. This could be a lake. This might be New York. I don't know where this is. So it could be a lake or part of the ocean. I don't know how New York City works, but confident it's outdoors. 89% confident there's a skyscraper. 61% confident there's a reflection in there. So you can see that just in you passing this image, it gives you a lot of data. Gives a description that's only 27% confident, but a city skyline with water. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Even though it's only 20%, oops, sorry about that. It's only 20% confident. It can give a description of what is happening within this image. What's also interesting and neat about this is it can also, let's say we're creating a application and we are sort of like Facebook and want people to be able to post stuff, but we want to prevent them from posting anything provocative or full of adult content or hateful or angry or things, that are not okay. It does give also, we can use machine learning and AI basically to say, is there any racy content? Sorry. It's like, nope, it's 75% confident that there's nothing bad in there. And then it's 78% confident that there's no adult content or pornography within this image. I don't know where the other 22% is, but right, it can do that. So if somebody does post it and it's like, yep, 100% positive or 68 positive, 68% positive that there is something like that, we can prevent that image from being uploaded onto my platform. Let's see if I want to do like another one. Same sort of thing. It's 100% confident that there's a building here, that there's a car here, and it has all these different tools and different tags in there. So let's say I wanted to just create like a Shutterstock of images, even if I just pass them in and I can have them sorted by tags. Let's say I wanted to have an image that had yellow in it, right? My users are like, I just need something with some yellow in it, right? This is confident that there's some yellow in there. So I could, have this in my folder sort of thing. Yellow car on the street, 55% confident, almost 100% confident there's no adult content, and 99% that there's no racy content. With computer vision, you can also read image or text in an image. So I can transcript this. It says 42nd Street 42. So it says 42 Street 42. I can read handwritten imagery as well. So if I do this, steel cut oats with apricots, cranberries, spices served with yogurt or milk, 450, it will do that. I mean, you kind of think about, I've got my family has some recipes that my grandmother has written stuff down. And, if you lose that file, it's like, okay, I've lost this family recipe, but now with this, I can actually just, yes, I could take a picture, but B, I could also take a picture and it will take out all of the text and maybe the steps I need to do. And I can actually just put that in a document. And now it's on the cloud in my G Drive or, OneDrive, if you're on Microsoft or whatever, and now it's there forever. Right. And so it's a way that we can still use this to recognize different texts and different handwritings and, things that you see, whether it's this guy, even to where it's got like the dashes and the to go, it detects a space between the to go versus these ones, it didn't detect a space. So it's pretty robust. The last thing that computer vision really is great at is it has over 200,000 celebrities from politics, sports, business, entertainment, and it has over 9,000 landmarks from around the world. So if this would have been a thing, if there was an app back when I was in Spain, I would have not looked like an idiot because I could have taken a picture of it and it would have told me exactly what it is, right? To where this is 95% confident that this is Statue of Liberty. And there's a lot of apps coming up. Google is, one of the big drivers in this, but there's a lot of apps coming up that, you can take a picture and it'll be like, oh, this is the White House, with maybe a link to what is the White House. And if you click on this, it might tell you, oh, the White House is blah, 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 blah. So a really cool thing. And again, this is all out of the box. So if I, as a developer, want to utilize any of these, I just have to use computer vision, the tool computer vision, integrate that into my application. And then I am good to go. Then I've got, it's just, again, out of the gate, I have these tools that I can use to where it's automatic. I don't have to train any sort of model to say like, is there a car in this? Nope, it's already there. So when we're looking at this certification, there's a couple things. The couple questions might say, if I want to do, this, if I want to build an application that does computer vision and facial recognition, what would I do? What service would I use? If I was just wanting to use just computer vision, right? I could use the computer vision tool, which is just a specific resource for the computer vision service. So what we just went over, if I wanted to do any of that, I could just subscribe to that. And it's just that resource alone. I could also subscribe to cognitive services. So a general cognitive resource that includes computer vision, along with many others like text analytics, translator text, and other things. You can sort of think about it this way. And this is going to be important for the exam. With cognitive services, that's sort of like a premium package, right? It has everything you need. Now with that, it's going to pay more and you might not be using everything. So you might not be using text analytics or translator text or other things, but if you're using more than one, then it might make sense to do cognitive services. On the other hand, let's say that we work, we're all part of a team and we work for a Fortune 100 company, but we have our own budgets, right? We have to stay within the constraints of our budget. Now, it might make most sense from a company perspective for us to have a subscription to cognitive services, and maybe us pay a portion of that. But let's say that we wanted to use computer vision and then another team somewhere else wanted to use the form recognizer because they were like accounting, let's say. Well, I don't want to necessarily sign up for cognitive services and pay for the whole thing if I just need computer vision. So from that perspective, maybe my org only wants to sign up for computer vision and I pay for what I'm using. I'm not having to pay for, other people to be using I don't need to pay for cognitive services if I don't need all of those things. Now, again, obviously it might make sense for a company to just do cognitive services, but as we all know, companies don't always do what makes the most sense. And usually in an organization, they do what's best for them versus like a global company thing, right? There's, I'm sure, plenty of resources that are, plenty of organizations that could use cognitive services, but they all just do an individual thing, which actually might cost more. But that's the way the company chooses to do it. So just knowing though, if we're being honest, usually cognitive services is on the exam if they say an and. So if I want to do computer vision and form recognizer, you're going to want to do like cognitive services. If it's just saying I want to implement this, then you would do the single service. So cognitive services is sort of your catch-all. We're going to see that throughout the rest of this afternoon. In order for me to implement this computer vision, I need a key. And if you guys at all are familiar with APIs, basically a key is what you use to authenticate client applications. So basically it's the unique ID that tells Microsoft that it is your application. So when they go and bill you, let's say they bill it on how many requests you're making for the month. That key, every time a request is made, it says, oh, charge it to this account or associate this click to this account. And that then tells them, oh yeah, okay, Will's company had 9,000. So they're below the 10,000. So they only pay $20 a month or whatever it is. Then they have to have an endpoint that provides an HTTP address at which your resource can be accessed. So these are the two things really. It's just, this is how this slide is. How do you integrate this into your application if you want? So within computer vision, there are tasks. Again, I can describe an image if I wanted to. We've talked about that. I can tag visual features so I can see, skyscraper, tower, building if I wanted to, again, maybe filter out or associate my images together. I could do it that way. Again, I can detect objects using a bounding box. So I can detect like a tower, a building, a car, whatever that might be. But you will also, if you're using this tool, you'll get the type of object, but you're also going to receive a set of coordinates that indicate top, left, width, and height of the object detected. So that way you can see where in your image does this building occur, this tower, or, XYZ. So if I did want to do something with it, like highlight it or, do something else, I could, I have the coordinates within the image to do that. Another cool thing is just like celebrities and landmarks, it is already pre-built to have thousands of logos. So if I wanted to detect brands, one example I use is, maybe if I'm creating a commercial, maybe I want to run my commercial through this machine learning model to make sure that I'm not using any brands that I haven't gotten the okay. That way I don't get sued, right? Like that way I don't have a Pepsi can or something, Coke can out there, and then all of a sudden Coke gets mad and then sues. Or you even think about from pop culture reference, like recently Sex and the City just rebooted, or it's called like And Just Like That or something, and the guy dies on Peloton. Sorry if you haven't seen it. And one of the main characters dies like the first episode. It sounds stupid, but because he died at a Peloton class, the Peloton stock literally not crashed, but dipped hard. Like it lost a lot of money because this episode came out. And then that's where, Peloton's like, oh, you portrayed our brand in a poor way. I can sue you because we lost all this money. Thanks HBO Max. And then they, start fighting. So maybe it might just be a good idea to run this through this computer vision to make sure, oh yeah, Peloton, maybe I'm just doing some spin class. Like if they wouldn't have done, sounds really stupid, but if this TV show would have just done a normal spin class versus a Peloton class, Peloton wouldn't have lost millions of dollars. Sounds really dumb that even, traders let a fictional TV show affect a stock price, but same sort of thing, right? So we can use that to detect brands. If you like a pair of shoes, you're like, what brand is this? You might be able to do that as well. Again, we've talked about it. You can detect faces, puts a bounding box. Now there is a dedicated service called Face Service. That one's going to come with the more advanced functionality that you can do, but computer vision does allow you to just do general image analysis and basic face detection. Somebody asked in the chat, where is it getting its dictionary of terms to describe images? Say we wanted cell towers described as tower. So Thomas, with this, no, you can't, because this is already pre-built, right? They have whoever it is has designated that this is a tower. And so you're building it sort of out of the box. That is one of the limitations of using tools, because you're sort of subject to what they've called it and what they've decided it is and how they've trained it. But so you would have to build your, I mean, if you had it, you would need to build your own and designate that. Again, we talked about it. You can categorize an image as well. So if I was going through this and I wanted to sort of automate a process, I could categorize images through this computer vision. So you can have one like people or, you know, all these different things, then it just goes through them. And then with that, it will categorize your images and wherever they're at. So if I'm like a Shutterstock, then I can, you know, people can just do like a people folder and then it pulls up all my images, and I don't have to have somebody go in and saying, this goes to the people and this goes to cars and this goes to blank, 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 blank. Again, we've talked about you can detect domain specific content. So celebrities or landmarks. It does have like Taj Mahal, Statue of Liberty. It's like over 9,000 landmarks and over 200,000 celebrities if we wanted to use that as well. OCR we talked about is where I can take a picture and I can see the images within that picture. So if I wanted to say like, what does this picture say? Right? Even think of like a CAPTCHA. It's the thing to authenticate that you're not a robot, right? It might say like, what does this image say? And then you could say like courage or something like that. And it knows that this image is associated with courage. So like I was saying, there are some more advanced tools, especially with the OCR. So if I wanted just to use the basic, you know, I see an image, it has some text in there, and I just wanted to like basically be able to see what it says, I could use the OCR API. So it's just small amounts of text within an image. It just allows for quick extraction there. So again, not a ton of text within there. If I do have a ton of text, like if I wanted to read a multiple page document, or I wanted it, you know, handwritten notes by like 5 or 6 pages, and I wanted it to read that and then make it text, I would use something called the read API. And so that's when you have a lot of text within an image. Or if I like have just a text dominant image, then I would use the read API. It's great for scan documents that have a lot of text. If I want that to go and then read all that and then put that on another file or do something with it, I totally can. So then, so the read API is really going to be the one. If you have a lot of text within an image, use your read API. And if you have very little, you're going to use the OCR. These are the kind of questions they're going to ask, right? If I'm wanting to read just a little bit, which one would I use? And it's going to give you a list of 4, and you would pick the OCR. And if I do have a large document, you pick the read API. So just the reason I put this in there is basically to prepare you for what the exam is actually going to look like. The read API can tell you a ton of things, like the words in a line of text, the lines of text on a page. So you can get some different different analytics and different things in there as well, which is really cool. Some additional capabilities. So of computer vision can be, it detects image types. So if I want a clip art or a line drawing, it can tell me like, oh, I want all the images that are oil painting or clip art or line drawing, which is sort of cool. Color schemes. Again, so if let's say I'm like an interior design person, maybe I want a color scheme, it can do that for me. So I don't have to go then tag all these images and say, oh, it's this color and this color and this color. It will do that for me. It can also generate thumbnails if I wanted, and it can moderate, like I was saying, it can moderate content to make sure that content is not adult. It doesn't depict violence, or it's not like a gory scene or anything like that. Custom vision is what, any questions on computer vision? That's the outside of the box. You can use this right now. like I was saying, custom vision is something that you can use. Let's say you wanted to train something on images that are close to you, whether it be your friends. It's just a dedicated resource, which can be used for training and prediction, or both, right? If I want to train and predict, I can use this custom vision to train my model in order to do that. You can either use the custom vision service, or like I was saying, you could use cognitive services. So if I wanted to add this, I can do cognitive services. With custom vision, this is the things that you need as a developer. You need the project ID. So that's going to be a unique ID for the custom vision you created to train your model. So Microsoft will give you this unique ID. You'll have a model name. So the name you assign to the model during publishing. You'll have a prediction endpoint. So basically when you want to make a prediction, what's the HTTP address that endpoint goes to, and then a prediction key. Again, this is saying, you publish your model, and this is the key saying, okay, if this exists on Azure, every time I pass an image in, it associates it to your account. One thing to note, though, is if we are training a classification model, you must upload images to your training resource and label them with the appropriate class. Then you train the model and evaluate the training results. When you are doing a custom vision, it will take a considerable amount of images, of different views, of different angles. Like if you think about whenever you do facial recognition for like your phone, you have to do it in all sorts of different angles, because you have to make sure that it knows if it's looking at me from my left side or my right side, that it's me and not somebody else. So that is some of the issue. I mean, it's not an issue. If you wanted to do something custom, you just make sure that you have ample images of your friends. Friends, and somebody said in the chat, hundreds of font styles for letters and numbers. That's a great question. I would assume so. Yeah. To know that I don't know that you would ever use a custom vision for letters and numbers though, because you would just use that out of the box. It's not necessarily a difference. Like I would assume custom vision would be more of like, again, let's say that there was a room full of servers, right? And only people, only like vice presidents were allowed in that. Maybe you might create a custom vision that you train them on their face. And then before it even unlocks, you have an application that checks it and assures that, oh, this is the face of the person, they have access. So it gives like, oh, this is their face. This is the prediction of, this is Will, our VP of product. And then it goes and it checks, do I have access? And if so, then it unlocks. That kind of thing would be more of computer vision, not as much, not as much of like the letters and numbers, because it's not really anything you can do necessarily from that side of custom vision that isn't already in the computer vision piece. But yeah, you would want to make different lighting. You want to make sure that you are using different angles, different distances. So you got to make sure that you have tons of stuff whenever you are, creating your own custom vision here. Chris, did you have a question?
I do actually have a question. So we were working on a group project like last month, and we want, for example, to implement like the Google Calendar, the API, but we was not able because, like, for example, our application doesn't live in the Google Cloud. So is it the same story with Azure? Do we need basically our application to live, or basically our application, if it's required to live in a Microsoft?
Yeah, yeah, your application. Well, yeah. So if your application is utilizing this service, it would have the endpoint and that. Yeah, unless it made a call to your API. So there's two. So like if let's say it lives somewhere else, but then it would. So whenever we're dealing with this, right? Let's say you created a project and you put it on AWS. Here you've got a model. So you would actually then from API, so AWS, let's say my user, let's say it's the application that's checking to make sure I have access. My application would be on a server on AWS, right? That server would take in an image. Then it would run some function that calls this, right? API basically. So I would call this API and it'd pass this image. So then it would go to my server, where my model is running, run that, give me back something else So you'd basically have it running on both. So somebody asked, it would be invoking the API from the cloud through the internet, not necessarily running on the cloud, right? So it's sort of both, right? Like if you need, if you have your application on something, it's on some server, whether you're hosting it or Microsoft or AWS or GCP are hosting it. But you're saying, Chris, that your application on GCP wasn't hosted on, or your application wasn't hosted on GCP, therefore you couldn't use the tool. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you remember what tool you were trying to use?
Google Calendar. I wasn't looking into it. Honestly, I haven't checked up on that, but like one of my partners in the group, he was working on that, and basically that's what he told us. I didn't double check, honestly.
I'm not saying that what your friend is saying is wrong, but I think even Peter was in my class where I integrated, maybe not, maybe it was another class, because I used to teach Python, where we were able to integrate, Google Maps onto just some application and wasn't on GCP. It's because basically the way that this works is, we've got this, it sort of acts as like an API, basically, that we just call. And that's where this endpoint, this prediction endpoint. So I give something to my prediction model, and then it does something. Well, it takes my prediction key. So I basically pass it the information, the prediction key that I'm using, and then it processes that and spits it out and returns that out. So it doesn't necessarily because there's something called cross-platform, meaning that maybe I've got AWS on some of my services and Azure on some of my services, and even another service on GCP. Maybe I have all three, right? I'm able to do that. So I'm not quite sure what issue your friend ran into. But yeah, I was able to do Google Maps, and it was, you just have your API key and then you should be fine. So I would assume the same thing with the Google Calendar, unless it became something with like the authentication of the actual Gmail itself. Might have been the issue, but I would say that, not saying your friend's wrong, but I would say that.
That's amazing. That's my,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
By the way, you should know that Peter speaks very highly about you.
Oh, Peter's awesome. Peter's awesome. Cool. All right. Any questions on custom vision? Cool. Like I was saying, there's face as well. So there are cognitive servers that use and detect and analyze faces. So if I wanted to use, just again, our basic ones is going to be computer vision, right? If just like facial recognition, I want to make sure there's a bounding box around a face, I can do that. So some basic face analysis, such as determining age. I got a video indexer, which I can use to detect and identify faces in a video. So maybe I'm a cop, right? Or FBI, and I have some video of somebody robbing a store, and I want to see if it's if it's the guy that I have in custody. I can maybe use my video indexer to make sure and say, is this person? And then if I really want something from like a security perspective, that I want to utilize the face, I want to open up my phone and I want to be able to use my face to do that. Face does offer that. That's like the more, given the name, right? Face is pretty funny, but it offers the pre-built algorithms that can detect, recognize, and analyze faces. So if I was really wanting to do things like facial detection and verification, right? If I wanted to find a similar face, it kind of sounds funny, but if I wanted to find people that looked like me, I could do that. It could also group faces based on similarities. If I wanted all redheads, or if I wanted all blue-eyed people, I could do that. And it can identify people. So again, if I maybe have people that I need, or I give it an image, it might be able to identify people through that. So again, if I wanted to create that, let's say I'm a securities company, I can either just use face and just use those tools. So I want to, if I want to use face, then I use that specific resource. If I don't intend to use any other cognitive services, right? I don't need to do text analytics or anything else. Then I can just use face, and I will only pay for face. But as always, I can use cognitive services, because if I just enroll into cognitive services, I have access to everything we've already talked about. With face, it's fairly simple. You just need a key, so that authenticates the client, says that it's associated to your account, then an endpoint that provides an HTTP address at which your resource can be accessed. So those are only two things you need. and you can start utilizing these tools. And the last one for computer vision is gonna be our form recognizer. So basically, form recognizer is great for, it's like an out-of-the-box receipt model. So I can train and recognize, extract data from sales receipts. This is great when I'm trying to get reimbursed from like a sales perspective. And, you know, I go on a sales trip and I will go out to eat and I go, you know, I need my food and I just want to be able to upload it. And then it calculates everything for me. And it maybe even filters it into like, oh, they bought this much in food, this much in alcohol, this much in, you know, well, I don't know, something else. It'll allow me to do that. Like I had one of my best friends, he used to be a sales guy, and they had a sales rule that you could never spend more on alcohol than you could on food, right? And so that'd be a great, even just a great tool to say like, hey, we're spending a lot of money when we're taking clients out. What percentage of our bill is what, right? And so if 80% of it's food and 15% is drink and the other percent's tip, it's like, oh, okay, great. But if, you know, 75% of that is alcohol and 20% is food and whatever, or, you know, you think of like a salesperson that goes to the same restaurant, maybe they know somebody and then now they're leaving these like $1,000 tips because they're working together to steal money, right? Like there's ways that you can use these services to make sure that your company's not bleeding out money in different areas. I can use with form recognizer, I can use custom models. So that's going to allow me to extract some key value pairs. So you guys all should be familiar with key value pairs and table data from forms. So I can use my own data so to sort of help tailor the model to the specific forms as well. So sort of like a custom model. And then I can sort of send that out and then people can utilize that form recognizer tool. As always, if I just was doing forms, let's say my whole point is I was just creating an application, somebody could submit a receipt and then I gave maybe a breakdown of, you know, what was what and where they went. And I kept that, you know, in the cloud or something. I could just use form recognizer, but as always, I could do that with cognitive services. Just a little example of the pre-built receipt model. So this is out of the gate. Microsoft's already built it. So in English, it's recognized. It's designed to recognize receipts in English. So that's just something to keep in mind. If, you know, you're having somebody that's traveling abroad or going somewhere else, or you're a company that's in Europe, like maybe this isn't the best one, and maybe you do want to train it on a custom one. But what it will do is it'll do, you know, time of transaction, data transaction. So maybe I can like create if I had an application, I create a date. And so that way, if they go to a certain date, they can see, you know, all the receipts associated with this date. The merchant information. So where does somebody like to frequently go? How much was paid in taxes? Maybe, you know, if somebody's a nonprofit and they're one of my customers, I can have how much is paid in taxes. And then maybe they go to the government and say, hey, I'm actually not supposed to pay this in taxes. Receipt totals. So again, how much totally is being, or how much has been spent totally, and then any other pertinent information. And then all the text on the receipt is recognized and returned as well. So again, this is where things that can come in like sales associate. If it's always the same person, I'm always leaving really large tips to one person, that might be a flag, right? That says, hey, maybe them and Frank are working together to, you know, take $500 a dinner because they're doing $1,000 tip on a, you know, on a $200 meal or something like that. So with form recognizer, and this is one of the questions that it might ask, is it's going to ask what the, you know, what are some formats you can have? So JPEG, PNG, BMP, PDF, and TIFF are the formats. These are the two ones that are really important. File size must be less than 50 megabytes. That was a question. And then the image size being between 50 by 50 pixels and 10,000 by 10,000 pixels. Both of those were questions on the exam. So make sure that, you know, you have those, you know, it's those little things there, right? Of like, you know, what is the max size that you can, of a file that you can upload in Form Recognizer, just being aware of that. There also is a free tier subscription for this model. So if you did want to play around with it now, honestly, you could go integrate it into an application, just build something up real quick, integrate it, and then it's free to sort of mess around with. And so you can do that with PDFs. Any questions on computer vision? Okay, we have two options. NLP is a decent size, probably the next 30 minutes. And then we can take a break. And then we have our conversational AI. That one's not very large. I think that one's like 5 or 6 slides. It's not a super ton. Or we can take a break now, then do NLP, or we can do NLP and then take a break and then sort of finish off with some conversational AI. And then if we have time, which we will, we can do a fun, there's like a fun little game that we can play at the end. What do you guys think? Or we can just, if you guys are like, hey, we're good, do you guys just want to crush it? You guys can put in the chat what you want to do. If you want to do a break now or break later, power through, crush it. I love this idea. I'm just like down to crush it. Because it's like, if we're going to do NLP now, we might as well do conversational AI and then we'll be done within the next hour, hour and a half. So we'll be done in about 3. Cool. We'll just keep going. All right. So this is where it gets really sick. Just so you know, here's a video. This is going to get you hyped. I'm a little bit nerdy. Let me make sure I'm sharing my sound. I think this is so cool. This hypes me up so much. Closed captions, English. Okay.
How often are you alive when the dawn of a new medium comes out? I knew that I had to be a part of VR because there are no rules for what VR should be. Starship Commander is a choose-your-own-adventure VR narrative that uses natural language processing, so you can actually have a real conversation with the characters.
I'm Sergeant Sarah Pearson. I've been assigned to your wing today.
When we started making Starship Commander, we had to figure out, how do we get technology that can understand what a person's saying so that we can have these new narrative experiences? We're a science fiction game. We come up with new words. No off-the-shelf software could let us put in custom words.
Who are the Echnians?
In our story, the bad guys are called the Echnians. And every time we said Echnian, it would come up with really weird words that were similar to other things that you would say. And so it would get confused all the time. So we needed to make sure that we could supply our own script. We started using Microsoft Cognitive Services to power the back end of Starship Commander.
Looks cool.
Once we plugged custom speech service into Starship Commander, I had tears in my eyes when I was playing it because it's like, oh my God, this is it. This is the experience we want.
Open the hatch.
Voice print accepted. Welcome, Commander.
You can essentially put your script in there and it knows, oh, these are the ways that people are gonna talk. And these are the phrases that they're gonna say.
Cool. What's my mission?
Must be something pretty important.
And then the second thing too was the intent detection. With Lewis, you basically give it a couple statements. After you've given it a couple statements, you crunch it and you start typing in your own statements, and it's shockingly scary how good it picks up even stuff that you didn't put in there.
Computer, use autopilot and let's be on our way.
Autopilot engaging.
I have never seen an opportunity like this, where there's a wide open playing field, no one's written the rules yet, there's going to be tons of amazing software out there, and I just can't wait to see what other people write.
That's pretty sweet. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. We're not going to do this as groups. We're just going to do it together. But NLP is natural language processing. So can anybody tell me, what are some things that maybe we encounter on our daily basis that you know and recognize as that use natural language processing? Yeah, exactly, David. Utilizing our assistants, right? Whether it's be Siri or Alexa or Google. Absolutely. Those are great things for NLP. Anything else you guys can sort of think of? Cordana, yeah. Google Translate, yeah. Absolutely. Your mom's dog might need an update. Absolutely. Yeah, autocorrect on Microsoft Word. Absolutely. Remote controllers that have the voice button. See, all of these, see, NLP is so ingratiated into everything that we do right now that it is, I mean, there's autocorrect on iMessage gets me every time was going to say a funny joke, but I said I forgot those were recorded. But, you know, there's so many tools and things that we use with NLP. And NLP is just out of the gate awesome. This is what I was using to do that caption, you know, the closed captions with the translate. But there's so many tools that we can use with our NLP. First one's going to be text analytics. And this is a service that we can analyze text documents and extract key phrases, detect entities such as places, dates, and people, and evaluate sentiment. So let's walk through this. So like I said, I can take a text document and I can get a ton of insights out of this. And what's interesting is for the most part, humans are able to read some text and understand the meaning behind it, whether I'm sarcastic or I am something else, without considering grammar rules and, you know, the actual text written in it. But with a computer, this is very, 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 very hard. But Microsoft has worked really hard, right? And they've trained their models really, really well to where their cognitive service can simplify application development by using pre-trained models. So things that are already created that can determine the language of a document or text. So immediately out of the gate, it can say, you know, you've been on Google, it says like, hey, this is in another language. Do you want to translate it? It can perform sentiment analysis on a text and determine a positive or negative sentiment. Google, my Gmail right now, if I write an email, it will detect if this is a nice email, if I'm being a little bit stern, if I'm being professional, if I'm, you know, just the sentiment of my writing, the way I'm writing, the grammar that I'm using, the exclamation points or the periods, or just the tone of my writing, it will give me a little indicator that says, hey, this is, you know, sort of an angry email, et cetera, et cetera. Excuse me. I can extract key phrases from a text that might include the main talking points. There's a lot of apps coming out now that instead of you reading a book, it'll just give you the key pieces of each chapter. So you can read a book, you know, in a day. So you basically, it's just, you know, AI cliff notes. And the last one is like, it can identify and categorize entities within a text. An entity can be a people, a place, an organization, an everyday item such as dates, times, and so on. So, you know, maybe you've gotten a text message and it might say, I've gotten text messages and it says, hey, do you want to make this a calendar thing? Or, you know, I'll get a text message that says, hey, here's my address. I'll open Maps and it'll say, based off your text, do you want to go here? Right. It is doing that. It is reading those messages and it is detecting, is this a place that, you know, this person's about to go based off of this texting, which is wild. So what we're going to do here is we are going to do same sort of thing. There are 4 groups. So basically, you're going to be in your group again, and we're going to do this. This is 10 minutes to learn about the topic. We're going to give it 15 minutes. And what you'll basically do is somebody in your group, there's only 4 here. So it should be good actually for everybody. There might be some people that have to work together, but what you will do is, you know, somebody will be language detection and you'll have to answer these 4 questions. And you just do this on a Google document. It's not, you don't have to show it or anything. I'm just, I'll give you this, but just do it on your own document. You don't have to, you know, create a slide or anything of that nature. But basically we're going to come back in 15 minutes. And what you're going to do is you're going to use this reading. And this reading is going to be on all this information, whether it's language detection. What does it mean if it gets a 0 or a non is going to be a question that we ask. What if it says non? What does that mean? With sentiment analysis, how does that work? With key phrase extraction, how does that work? And with entity recognition, how does that work? So those 4 things. So I will put you in a group, and then within your group, just assign, you know, just 1, 2. Don't worry about this group. 1, you just think of like one person's going to do language detection. Looks like we're going to have 5 per group. So there's going to be one of them that 2 people do. So it's totally up to you guys how you do that, but we'll give it 20 minutes. So we're going to come back at 2:20 and then you guys will just do that reading. I'd encourage you, once you get yours, you know, do the questions, learn about it, and then read the other ones. It's a quick page. So then you can do that. And then we'll come back and talk about these. Any questions on this? Again, if you want to add on, you can just do make a copy, or just one person do like a Google Doc if you wanted. Totally up to you. Any questions? All right, friends. So with this text analytics, let's just go ahead and talk about it as a group. Does anybody want to talk about language detection, answer these questions? What does it do? And what are capabilities, what it returns, et cetera, et cetera?
I can grab this one.
Yeah, thank you.
It basically just determines what the predominant language in a text is, and it will return three things. First of all, the language that is most predominant, like English or Spanish. Second thing it returns is the ISO 6391 code, such as EN for English or ES for Spanish.
Yeah.
Then it will return a confidence score, which is going to be on a scale of 0 to 1. 1.0 means it's very confident. 0.1 means it's not very confident. And there are also weird cases where if it's if the text is too ambiguous, like it's just a smiley face, it'll return an unknown language, an unknown ISO code, and not a number for the confidence score.
Yeah, exactly. Way to go. Thanks, Jacob. So that's exactly it. It's it will be able to detect language. And then what's great about it is it can detect, like, let's say you're writing, a Yelp review for a French restaurant, right? It's able to detect, okay, this is in English, but this word is either, an item that they ate or the name of the restaurant, et cetera, and it can tell you and distinguish, what is the main language, even though a couple words might be in another language. And exactly like what you're saying too, score of not a number, is if it doesn't understand or doesn't detect which language that this is actually written in. So something like an emoji might cause some issues. Great job. Next one would be sentiment analysis. Who wants to talk about that? Sentiment analysis. Anybody go over that?
I can.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So basically what sentiment analysis is analyzes the texts you pass into it, and it can determine the mood or the sentiment of the comment, review, or a post on the internet. And it assigns a score in range from 0 to 1 to the posts. The values closer to 1 being more positive, and closer to 0 are negative.
Okay.
And in case they're closer to 0.5, that can mean that the what's the name? It's indeterminate sentence.
It's just the indeterminate means can't really determine which one is just sort of there.
Yes, and it can happen if you pass either a list of kind of unrelated words, or if you, for example, set the language in the software to be English, and you pass a text in French, then the score will be exactly 0.5 in that case.
Awesome. Yeah, way to go. So it can just detect the sentiment, whether, like I was saying in Google, right, in Gmail, if I'm writing something that's professional or angry or frustrated, you can do that also with reviews as well. That's another one. So if I'm on Yelp and I want to see all the good reviews or the bad reviews of my business, I can see that as well. Way to go. Thank you for that. Okay, so key phrase extraction. Anybody have an example of this? Anybody want to talk about this?
I'll grab it real quick.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas.
Yep. So key phrase extraction is basically when you're evaluating any type of document for the main points. So it can kind of cut out the excess fluff from documents by just grabbing those main points or key phrases. Example would be like the reviews, like you said. It'd take the main points out of it. So, you know, delicious food, great service, whatever you want those key phrases to be, it can kind of look for those, extract those. And that way it also does kind of provide a brief type of sentimental analysis, except it doesn't have the rating, but you could easily see, hey, this one was mainly happy words, this one was poor words, you know, stuff like that. And then it's useful because it just cuts out the fluff. You can get, you know, a quick overall picture. And I would say it could be useful in kind of briefing executive owners or maybe even politicians on, you know, main points of a document and kind of public response to, you know, documents or speeches they had, stuff like that. So.
A great thing of Blinkist, right? Same sort of thing is just what are the key points? What are the main, like, what's the meat of this? Thanks, Thomas. That's exactly right. Right. So the key phrases, what are the big things or the big talking points? You know, if you're leaving a review, what's really the meat of this, like delicious food or poor service, something of that nature. You can sort of also think, I don't know if you've seen, but like word maps, right? Are sort of becoming a thing where it takes key phrases of what you say and then the commonality of that word. So if it's like creative or fun, and then what a word map will do is then take that and, like, you know, the more it's referenced, the more times it's used, the more, like, the bigger the word is. So it's kind of like a useful thing, I guess, when people are talking about that. So you can sort of think about that as well. But yeah, really, it's taking out the key phrases of a document. Yeah, so maybe it just highlights a couple of the points, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Where to go? And then last one would be entity recognition. Anybody want to tackle this guy?
I can do it.
Yeah, thank you.
So entity recognition is basically, so you provide the service with a bunch of text. It doesn't even have to be structured. You just provide a bunch of text, and then what it does, it picks out a bunch of entities that it recognizes. And what an entity is the best way I could sum it up is everything you would store in a database. So stuff like numbers, date, times, person, organizations, emails, phone numbers, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it recognizes like what the entity, like an entity, and like what it falls under. So say you put in something like Among Us, then it would recognize, you know, Among Us as, you know, a game, or like Barack Obama, former president, person, or like, yeah, even stuff like last week or like every Tuesday, it would recognize those phrases and set it as an entity.
Yeah, and this is going to be big whenever we are talking about, yeah, thank you for that. Thanks, Rick. It's going to be big and when we're talking about our conversational AI. So we're going to sort of talk about entities, but you can also think about entities is going to help. Let's say I have a document that I am writing about the Apple M1 computer, right? And how to install bcrypt in that. And let's say we have a company or a class in Costa Rica and we want to convert it to Spanish. What's great about this is if I am translating, it'll do entity recognition to where it actually won't translate the company Apple to whatever Apple is in Spanish. It'll just keep that as Apple, right? So it is an entity that we have that if we're using translation, if we're using different things, it can help prevent with translations. But then exactly like what you're saying, recognize the entity of next week or tomorrow, or, you know, something of that nature, a company or a person, something like that. It can recognize this is the entity, or who are the people named in this document, something like that, right? To where we can start getting entities there. So way to go, guys. Thanks for that. Hopefully that was a nice little thing to jump into text analytics. And so you guys could see, you know, people, place, things, sentiment, et cetera, et cetera. Now moving on, there's Translator Text. So this is a service that can translate text between more than 60 languages. Now, last time I looked it up a couple months ago, maybe November, there was, and I don't think that new languages are being created necessarily, but there were over 3,000 languages that are used, right? And some obviously are used much more than others. But that's sort of an issue, if we're just being honest, with all cloud computing. And we're talking about inclusiveness and fairness, is with these, you know, this is already trained on 60 languages, which is so much, and that's incredible. But we can see that if we wanted something to write a document that every person on this earth could read in their native language, you still have a lot of work to do, right? Because there's over 3,000 languages, and this is doing 60. But this is, I mean, I say that not to put a damper, because this is still an incredible technology where we can take stuff and actually translate it into a new language. And back in the day, I don't know if you guys, were there with the beginning of Google Translate, but basically what it would do is you would put in a sentence, let's say in English. A lot of, I took like a Spanish class. And so you would put it in English, and then Google would translate it, but it would just translate the words, right? So it would just flip the words or translate the words, but the sentence structure was off. So at the beginning, our super early attempts of machine translation was literal translations, right? Where each word was translated to the corresponding word in the target language, which had some issues though, because in Spanish, the way that you do adjectives or the way that you do, you set up a sentence structure is just different than English. And so what we had to do, or not we, I didn't do it, Microsoft did, is we then have to say, okay, not only are we translating it into this language, but here's the sentence structure for this language. Here's where we can actually change the meaning of a phrase if we put it in the right way. And we want to, make it to where somebody would read it in their native language, not just, apple and apple or whatever the translation is, but an actual sentence and a sentence structure. So for that, our AI systems must be able to understand not only the words, but also the semantic context in which they're used, right? So in this way, the service can return a more accurate translation of the input phrase or phrases. The grammar rules, the formal versus informal, the colloquialisms, all need to be considered, right? So what is just like something that you say that is very informal versus formal? What is, the different grammar rules of each language, of sentence structure? We had to learn all of that. And so Microsoft did that and then created, right? They've worked very, very hard and have over 60 languages that they can now do that, right? Where there's a tool called Translator Text. And what it will do is it supports text-to-text translation. So let's say I wanted to write you a letter. If I use this translator text service, let's say I speak English and you speak Spanish, we could use this to where you could read my letter in Spanish and it would actually set it up in the sentence structure, and you would read it in the same way that you would, talk and speak. Like if I was speaking it in Spanish or writing it in Spanish, if that was my native language, that's the intent. And with this, just like the cognitive services were with our computer vision, when we're dealing with this text analytics and especially this like translation, there's one called speech service, and that one enables speech to text and speech to speech translations. And so this is a great one for, if I'm speaking, again, closed captioning, right? If I'm speaking and then I want to translate the words that I'm speaking into a text in another language, it's able to do that, and it's already pre-built out of the gates. Now you have to have a language. So like whenever we're looking at our text analytics document where it has the different ISO codes, right? So we have to know the ISO codes in order to actually utilize these tools. But I mean, that's in the documentation. We can set that up to where we can actually have people who are doing that. What's also great about the Translator Text API is there is some configuration that you can set up to fine tune the results, where you can do profanity filtering. So by the service will translate the input text without filtering out profanity. Now, if you wanted to say certain things, like profanity levels are typically cultural specific, so you can control profanity translation by either marking the translated text as profane or just omitting it in the results. So, there's certain words like in Australia that they say all the time, but if you were to say that in the US, it's not a great, it's sort of offensive, and people don't typically speak that way, and vice versa, right? We say things in America that if I were to say that in the UK, or if I were to say that in Europe, that might be an issue. So we can set that filtering to make sure that people aren't offended, right? And we don't say horrible things, and that it doesn't use its tool to translate hate or anything like that. There's also selective translation, so you can tag content so that it isn't translated. So for example, you may want to tag code. So this is where I'm talking about the brand name, the entity recognition. If I don't want to translate Apple, if I don't want to translate a word or a phrase that doesn't make sense when it's localized, that might be, something that we want to make sure that we don't translate, or we want to add some sort of like tag code or something of that nature. So I can do that with this translator text. Now there's also speech, which is what we've talked about. So we're starting to see, and this is a big, probably one of the biggest ones, is AI solutions are accepting vocal commands and providing spoken responses. This is your Siris, your Alexas, your Googles. And so just anything of like, turn off the lights. Will it rain today? I literally asked Alexa this morning, what's the weather like, so I could walk my dogs. And so Azure has these things. They have it in speech recognition. So that's just the ability to detect and interpret spoken input. This is the idea of like, hey, turn on the lights, and it actually detecting and interpreting that and then doing that. And then speech synthesis, which is the ability to actually generate spoken output. So if I say, what's the weather like today? It recognizes, it asks, or it understands what I'm asking, and then it's able to generate a spoken output with the answer of what I'm asking it to do. For the speech in Azure, I can either do speech to text or text to speech, to where both are offered for, both the speech recognition and speech synthesis capabilities through speech cognitive services. So it includes both those APIs, speech to text and text to speech, that will then take in my speech and then, write it on text, or take in text and then say it out loud as well. So I can use speech for that, or again, it's part of that cognitive services piece. So let's say I was building something that detected faces, and then also, I had to say something. I had to say a password or something. I had to detect my actual, voice, or I had to take in this certain code. I could just use cognitive services and use both there. And the last one is what that video was on. This one's called Language Understanding Intelligence Service. So it's basically where I can train a model that can understand spoken or text-based commands. So just like they were saying in the video, that they were creating a video game where you have these commands where you tell them to get in my car and or my spaceship and put it on autopilot. That's what Luis is. So it's just a language understanding intelligence service. So it's just called, more commonly known as language understanding, but in Azure, it's called, Luis. And to work with that, we have to take into account 3 core concepts. So if I wanted to build this like that person in the video game was building it, I have to take in 3 core concepts. The first one is an utterance. So the utterance is maybe the phrase that the user might say in which your application must interpret, right? So for example, if I was using a home automation system, a user might say, switch on the fan, turn on the light. That entire sentence would be my utterance. Within that utterance, what we have is our entity, and that's the item in which the utterance refers to. What are we, what is the item that we're targeting here? So if I'm saying switch on the fan or turn on the light, in both of those, the fan and the light are the entities. That's what I'm trying to target. I either want to turn on the fan or turn on the light, right? But it's the fan and the light that I'm trying to target. And so there are 4 types of entities. I can either do machine learned, which are entities that are learned by your model during training from context in the sample utterances you provide. I could give a list that are defined as a hierarchy of lists and sublists. So maybe, I might have that. I might say like light, and then within light, I might have a sublist of like lamp, other things, or fan might be a ceiling fan, or, something that might be a synonym of fan. Propeller, I don't know. So that way I can provide that list. I could do regex, right? To where I create a certain pattern, maybe for like a telephone number. If I'm doing an automated conversational AI, or they have to input their phone number or something like that, maybe I have a regex where they have to put in, like, here's a regex for, it has to be between 0 and 9, there has to be 3 of them, -093 -094, meaning that has to be a phone number that does 3-3-4, right? Your typical US phone number. Or I could do a pattern any, so entities that are used with patterns to define complex entities that may be hard to extract from sample utterances. So there's different things I can use to detect or provide my entities. And then the last thing, so we have our utterance, that's the words, that's the sentence that we say. We have our entity, which is what we're trying to target. And then we have our intents, and that is what are we trying to do? So in the top one is switch the fan on. We're trying to switch on the fan, right? I want to turn it on is my intent. if I want to turn on the light, well, my entity is my light, but what am I wanting to do to the light? I'm wanting to turn it on. So I have to break these down as I'm building this out to where maybe I've got an intent, right? It's a greeting where a related utterance might be hello, hi, good morning. My entities, I don't have any, right? Here I might have a turn on, right? To where I build this out. I'm building out, let's say, just a home automation system where I've got some related utterances. I might say, switch on the fan, turn on the light. And my entity that I'm trying to target is my fan that is connected, the device that I've identified as fan, and the device I've identified as light. So that way those are the entities. And so when it does that, it has those three things that can actually, go and turn that on. If I want to check the weather, then I might say, what's nice is it might provide an utterance that says, what is the weather for today? Is it supposed to rain today, where it doesn't necessarily have any entity unless you set up like a location services. But if I say, what is the weather in Seattle tomorrow? Then I have these entities of Seattle location and tomorrow date time. And then obviously, whenever we're starting to deal with these, language understandings, people ask Siri like, hey, what's the meaning of life? Is this thing on? So we can start building out fun things to where, Siri will say some really funny things, or there'll be an Instagram video or TikTok of Siri saying like outrageous things to random questions that we can build all of this on. And so in order for us to use language understanding, let's say we wanted to implement this into a home automation system. Again, I can just a la carte do language understanding, or I could do cognitive services. If I had multiple resources I wanted to use, it falls under cognitive services as well. Okay. We're going to keep pushing through because this is the last thing we got, and then we'll be done. And this doesn't take very long, so it'll be within the next 15 minutes. So we're talking about conversational AI. And conversational AI is when is something that we've used before. We've all sort of used it. I talked about, calling Xfinity and somebody's talking to me, or if I'm on a chat bot and I'm trying to get something figured out. That is what conversational AI is for me. Or not for me, sorry, I just read Anna's message. That's what conversational AI is, right? It's AI that's able to have a conversation, understand what we're asking it, and then either do something that we have already pre-made of like, oh, here's a response. When somebody says, I want to check my bill, you look at their account and then you give the bill. And what this does is it actually takes away the usage that people have to have from a employee standpoint. So maybe I don't have to hire as many people to answer the same questions over and over if I can just build a bot that'll answer, frequently asked questions. Because right now, organizations publish support information like frequently asked questions. There's a whole point right there, right? That can be accessed through a web browser or dedicated app. So maybe it's like, hey, how do I check my bill? We've all seen this whenever we're interacting with companies. So there might be some specific questions that are hard to find within the website. So these, and so what happens is the organizations typically find their support personnel being overloaded with requests to help through phone calls, email, text messages, social media, and other channels. So now what they're doing is again, organizations are transitioning to AI solutions and making the use of basically AI agents. So instead of having somebody on the phone, they have an AI agent known as bots typically, which is just sort of the first line of automated support. Now, obviously, if you have a weird thing, then you will end up having to, maybe get to somebody if you have a unique situation. But if somebody says, here's an example right here, like, hey, I'm a support bot. What can I help you with? I have a question on my bill. What's your account number? Great. And then it says, okay, I found your details. What do you want to know? The bill amount, the due date, or something else. Then it might say, I just want to know the amount I owe, or when is my due date? If that was my simple question, they actually don't, I don't have to bug a person just to look that up. I just have a bot that can do that already. So there's a ton of different ways that bots can communicate and interact with users, either through conversation or through text or through a ton of different things. So this example here is what we call a chat interface. So it's something you might find on a website, but again, bots can be designed to be through email, through social media, voice calls, text messages. Like I was saying earlier, I had a coworker who, when they wanted to get a haircut, they just shot a text and a bot would reply with the schedule and openings. And then they would say, okay, I want this one and here's my name. And they would put that on the schedule, right? They didn't have to call. Somebody didn't have to pick up the phone and then, search and say what date is great. they just had a list of options and they chose from that. And then it was super simple for both the user and for the company as well. So when we're talking about conversational AI, conversations typically take place in the form of messages, exchange in turns, right? So I ask a question, they give me a response back, or they give me some options, and then I pick like number 2, and then they give me some more options, something like that. So in order to implement this sort of bot or this conversational AI, there's a couple things we need. We need a knowledge base of questions and answer pairs. This is typically your FAQ document that a company has. So it's just a built-in natural language processing model, which enables questions that can be paraphrased in multiple ways to be understood as the same semantic meaning. Same thing with like switch on or turn on the light, or, the fan, or, the lamp. Turn on the lamp is the same thing as turn on the light, that idea. And then a bot service. So we need those knowledge base and answers. So if somebody asks this question, this is the answer to that question. And they need a bot service to actually provide that, right? To be the interface to get those knowledge and get that to your users. So within our conversational AI in Azure, you can create a user support bot solution very quickly, and you only need 2 technologies. You need the Q&A maker, so that's the questions and answers, and then you need your Azure Bot Services. The Q&A maker enables you to create and publish a knowledge base, again, those questions and answers, with built-in natural language processing capabilities, and then whether that is through text, through or speech, right? Whether somebody's on the phone and they're trying to talk to an agent, or if they're writing or typing or something like that, they need the actual bot service, which is the framework for developing, publishing, and managing the bot, right? Putting it out to where a user can then, call or actually interact with this bot. Okay, so after providing a Q&A maker resource, you can use that Q&A maker portal to create a knowledge base that consists of questions and answers, question and answer pairs. These questions can be found either we can have a already existing FAQ document. So let's say your company already has that on their website. We can input that, or sort of link that, do a web crawler on the web page to say, here's my frequently asked questions. I can also buy chit chat data source. So there's companies that will have predefined chit chat data source. So if somebody's like, hey, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Right? Somebody's already built all of that different you can sort of think about like a data point and how to train that. So you have that, or you can enter it manually. Typically what companies will do is really a hybrid of all 3, right? They're going to use their existing FAQ page, things that are unique to their company that are on the FAQ page. They're going to typically use some sort of predefined chit chat data source just because it's easier, right? It's more robust. It has answers to questions that you don't necessarily think of, and you don't have to, pay somebody to sit and be like, oh, what's the weather today? Or how are you? Whatever. And then obviously there are going to be some unique things you don't necessarily want on your FAQ document, but that customers run into it frequently. So that when you might enter and edit manually and create those questions as well. So again, companies typically will do it, do a hybrid of all 3 of these. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. It's typically a combination of all those techniques. So questions in the knowledge base can be assigned alternative phrasing, which sort of helps you consolidate questions of the same meaning. So I might include a question like, where's your head office located? Or where's your head office location? But it might say something like, where's your head office located? Those are 2 different things, right? But we can say that, oh, this is an alternative phrasing. So if somebody asks either one of these, they're asking the same question, right? Like, where's our head office? That's the goal, right? So we can create those different phrasings that where a bot is more robust, and we can sort of anticipate how people ask questions. After we create our questions and our answers, right? The meat and potatoes of what our bot is going to take in and expect to take in and what they're going to answer for that. Then we have our Azure Bot Service, and this service provides a framework for publishing. So basically this is the bot that deploys. I have my questions and answers, and now my bot is what my users can actually access, whether it's through a chat box, like online, whether it's through email, or whether it's through on the phone, right? If I'm on the phone and I'm saying like agent or Bill, or say, we've all been on the phone, and it's like, tell me what you need help with today. And so it has I might say something, The bot translates and basically delivers my question or my phrase of what I said to the Q&A. It says, okay, based off the Q&A, this is what they're wanting. It gives it back to the bot, and the bot distributes and says, oh, you're asking for billing. Great. And then it says, you know, based off the billing, what are you looking to do? Well, how much I'm due? When is it due? Blah, blah, blah. And then I would say a phrase. It goes back to the bot. The bot goes back to the Q&A, and it just goes back and forth, right? It acts sort of as a deliverer from our user to our Q&A pre-built system. Cool. Any questions on conversational AI? Any questions on anything that we've got? Anything at all? I'm done with my material that I provided. So, because I know that some people are around the world, and so I know it's late for them. So, on anything today, are there any questions? There's also recordings, so if you need to go back. Okay. Well, so here's sort of the next steps. We're done for the workshop, so that's awesome. But now I just wanted to sort of talk about the next steps. Something I would encourage is there are practice tests. I'm going to be sending you an email tomorrow that goes through, and I'll link everything that I've had. I'll link, obviously, the slideshow, the recordings. I'll link this guy, everything we've done today, you will have access to. But something I'd really, really, really encourage is doing these practice tests. Right now, it's been on for a couple months, so I don't know how much longer it's going to be on, but now everything's 30% off. So it's like $8. But what's really cool is if I go to my account, there are some practice tests. Again, they're like $8. But what they are is they simulate what the Azure test actually looks like. And so here's different test sets of questions that are very similar to the ones on the exam. And I can either go into practice mode. Oops, sorry. Yeah, practice exam. And I can start tests. And then it'll just basically say, select 2 tasks that can be performed by using computer vision. Translate text, image, train a custom. I can detect faces in an image. Yep. I handwrite. Nope. Yep. Right. And so it'll tell me, okay, cool. Also, here's where that information is. So I can, you know, if I get it right, it'll tell me, and then I can click this. And then it says, oh yeah, here's where that information is. So if I do get it wrong, I can, you know, sort of go in and say where I can go in and reread that if I wanted. Again, it's $8. My encouragement, you're already going to pay $50. You're saving $50. It makes the most sense just to pay $8 more and assure that you pass it, right? And assure that you know it. And again, there's tons of different test sets. There's 237 total questions. If you buy it once, it is lifelong access. So if you, just something to keep in mind is that the certification does last for 2 years. So you are certified for 2 years. And after that, you have to get recertified. So these practice tests will still continue to be there, and they continue to become more robust as more people are using them, and there's more demand. So like the AI-900, if you look at this one, that one right here, so it has a ton more test sets because this is a larger exam. Tons of different test sets. Then it also breaks it down to like privacy. If you're having issues with really understanding the privacy port or the Azure pricing, it's got all these test sets. So you can just focus on those guys versus, you know, something else. So I would encourage you, do the practice test and then get certified. So cool. So here's where you sign up for the exam. We've already looked at where that is. So if I'm checking out here, I sign up. Again, you sign up through Pearson VUE. Now it is it's gonna look like it's $100. You're gonna sign up for Pearson VUE. I'm not gonna click this because it shows all my personal information. But you sign up with an account with Pearson VUE. Then you set up a time. You set up where, you know, when you want to do it, what day. And then at the very end, it's going to ask for a coupon code. I will be sending you in my email tomorrow. I'm going to be, or maybe this afternoon. I'm going to be sending you a coupon code. And so with that, you can sign up for, it's at the very end, and it'll take $50 off of that. So it'll just be $50. My encouragement to you is to, especially with this, we went through a lot today. So if you did understand it pretty well, there might be some things you need to go over again. But my encouragement is to get it set up sooner rather than later, because what I've experienced with students is if you actually pay the money and you actually have something set up, you are more inclined to study and actually do this, or else transparently, you learned some stuff today, but you sort of wasted 6 hours because you're not actually, if you just put it off, a lot of students just don't get certified. And so I'd say, give yourself maybe 2 weeks, like today, go sign up for 2 weeks from now. And then you'd have 2 weeks to really go through the material. We've gone through a ton today, to where I would bet if you took the exam or a practice exam, you do pretty good. Maybe there might be some stuff, especially since it's the first time you've been hearing all this material, might be some stuff, especially with the machine learning side. If you aren't from the data science section, that might be an issue, but I mean, 2 weeks is plenty of time. I don't think you would need less than 10 hours of studying in order to pass this exam. Somebody asked, is there any time limits? Do you mean in regards to how long you have to take? It's a 90 minutes is what you have. Or do you mean in regards to when you can set up?
No, I meant for how long is the coupon code?
Yeah. Yeah. So the coupon code expires in June. So you've got a while. Yeah. Your coupon code expires in June. So, so you got about 6 months, 5 months in order to use that unique code. But I will say you can only use it once. So, if you try to, if you sign up and you just miss it, then, you've used your coupon code. Again, you don't have to do it for the AI-900. You can use it for another one if you want. That coupon code is just worth $50. Again, I would schedule in advance. And then it's the very last step of the checkout is when you'll do your voucher code. And again, I'll be sending you an email that has all this information. Cool. Any other questions? All right, friends. Well, with that, I will stop the recording.